I've been seeing a lot of posts where people ask, how do I get started in photography? What camera do I need to buy? What lens do I need to buy? And then they drill down even further. They want to know, what's the best camera for street photography? What's the best camera for vlogging? What's the best camera for personal memories? What's the best camera for the film look? And all the responses to those questions are super different. And that's very valid because the true answer is it depends. It depends on what you need and what you're trying to accomplish. And so today, my goal is to give you 5 considerations as you're starting this journey so that you can make sure that you're making the best decision for you and buying gear that you'll actually be excited to use. Number 1, what do you want to get out of photography? And so to me, this is the most important factor because once you have a clearer vision of what you want to get out of your photography, you'll know what gear fits you best or like what you need to achieve that thing. And so I think maybe the way that I can be the most helpful is to walk you through each of my cameras and why I have them, or what situations I like, oh, that's the camera that I want to bring for this thing. That way you can kind of get some examples and ideas of why cameras work better for different situations versus other ones. So we'll just kind of go from least expensive to most expensive just to keep it easy. So the cheapest camera I have was free because it was from my parents. It's the Nikon Teletouch 300 AF. It is a point and shoot film camera, and I would say the quick highlights of why I gravitate towards it or in what situations I decide to use it is like family functions or like personal documentation. I think that once you kind of choose a film stock, you're kind of choosing a look for those particular photos that you're taking. And so it's really fun to think about like, okay, where am I going to be? What am I going to be taking photos of? And choosing a film stock that aligns with that, like highlights the best of those things. It's also very cute. Lots of people want to take that camera and take photos with it. And it's very lightweight, so it's super portable. The downside, I would say, is that everything is pretty much automatic, and that's the reason that I bought my second film camera, which is the Fujica AX3. And I would say this camera really succeeds in situations where I want to slow myself down, where similar to the point and shoot, I want to kind of choose the look beforehand, have an idea of what I'm going to shoot and where I'm going to be. But the focus is manual, the shutter speed, the ISO, the aperture, all of those things are manual. And so whenever I do take a photo that ends up turning out good, it feels earned. And that is an incredible feeling. The next camera on the list is a Lumix GX85. And I would say that this is like the all-arounder. It's a really great travel camera. It has pretty decent autofocus. It performs okay in low light. And really for the price point, I'm not sure what else could compete with it. And it also allows me to try out lots of different lenses and filters and things that don't end up being expensive. So I would say this is maybe the most flexible camera, or maybe the most room for growth. Like if you're really interested in photography and you want to kind of try out some different lenses and different things, this is a really good camera for that. The next one is the Fujifilm X-F10. So as lovely as the Lumix GX85 is, and as compact as it is, it's not pocketable. Even with a pancake lens, it's not pocketable. And part of that is just because it's heavy. One thing I really like about the Lumix is the build quality is solid, but that also just means that like it drags your pocket down. It looks kind of funky. And so the reason that I got the XF10 was because it's light, similar to the Nikon point and shoot. It's cute, so not only do I take photos of it, but like my partner throws it in her purse, friends will pick it up and take photos with it. And so I think if you're someone who's always taking photos of other people, it's really nice to have something that encourages other people to take photos of you. And that's exactly what that camera does. And because it's digital, it doesn't feel like, you have to get it right. It's okay if, not all the images turn out great. Like you're not paying per image. You just kind of put an SD card in there and let them rip. So that's definitely a good camera to kind of keep around. The next one is also a Fujifilm camera, but it's the X Pro 3. And I would say probably similar to like the X100 series. The reason that I got this camera is because it's fun. It's tactile, it's fun, and similar to film, I can kind of like choose that look before I even press the shutter button. And a no edit workflow for me is just so like exhilarating. It's especially once you do photography professionally, it can feel kind of daunting to feel like, okay, I'm going on a trip, I'm going to take photos that I really like, but then when I get back, I have to edit all of them. To have all of that built into the camera, and like as soon as you take the photo, that's how it looks, it feels really nice. And to be able to switch between like hybrid, or it's to switch between optical and electronic for the viewfinder, just kind of like takes you back to slowing down, kind of like with that manual film camera. So yeah, lots of reasons to use that for like personal documentation. It's also weather sealed, so it can be great for like going out and you don't know what the weather is going to be or whatever that looks like. And then my most expensive camera is my professional camera. It's the one that I'm making this video on. It's the one that I take whenever I'm hired for a shoot. And it's the Sony a7 IV. It's incredible. I honestly don't really think it has any flaws. I mean, I think if you're being picky, yes, there are things that it could do better. But if you're looking for a camera that you can grow with and that is going to take you a while to kind of like reach that ceiling, it's this camera. The autofocus is incredible. If you're taking photos of people or pets, like it will be able to keep up with them. If you're interested in video, similar to the GX85, it's a hybrid camera, so you can do both photo and video at a really high level. Honestly, when I look back at some of these videos, I still get impressed by the quality of it, both on this camera and the Lumix GX85. I think, yeah, they both just like really entice me to do more video because of how good it looks. So yeah, I would say that the Lumix is kind of like a budget beast, and the Sony a7 IV is just a beast. Number 2, budget. This one is definitely important because it's going to constrain some of your opportunities to purchase the camera that fits your needs. However, I don't think that's going to be true for most people. I would say you will always be in a better situation if you buy a less expensive camera that you really love and you end up using it over and over again to the point that you outgrow it. And so then you are excited to invest in new gear and potentially sell your old gear. That is a much better situation to be in than if you were to follow the craze or look for the most expensive camera, buy it, not know how to use it or utilize it to its full potential. And so you don't take it out as much as you should or as much as you want to. And then you end up trying to sell it, but you're not really sure the value of that camera because you never really use it in the first place. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as you are shopping for the right gear for you. Number 3, should you just use your smartphone? The answer for a lot of people for this question is going to be yes. If convenience is the number one factor for you when thinking about photography, then it's going to be really difficult to find a camera that's more convenient than the one that's always in your pocket or your purse or whatever that looks like for you. And they often say that the best camera is the one that you have with you, and for a lot of people that is going to be your smartphone. You are also going to be able to share those moments very quickly. You're not going to have to download them off of an SD card or anything like that. You can take lots of photos with all of the cloud storage options that are available now that can be relatively inexpensive. The biggest knock really to using a smartphone as your main camera, especially if you're more interested in like the art and the science of photography, is that a smartphone makes a lot of decisions for you. It really relies on computational photography, where maybe it's taking multiple photos and then stitching them together, or it's deciding that the background should be this bright or that the sky should be this dark. And so you don't really get to learn, you don't get to go through that process of trial and error to see how you want your photos to look. And that can definitely be a big hindrance on how quickly or how enjoyable it is for you to learn more about photography. The other thing to consider with a smartphone is that it's not very ergonomic and it's not very tactile. So if you're looking for something to disconnect you from your smartphone, then a true camera is going to be really powerful because you're going to be able to hold it in your hand, you're going to be able to focus on it in terms of like that's the thing that you were doing, that is the hobby that you're practicing. Whereas if you're using your phone as your camera and then all of a sudden you get a call or a text or whatever, you can easily get pulled away from being able to dive completely into that and learn more about it and see if it is something that you truly enjoy. So that's definitely something to consider when you're thinking about whether or not your smartphone should be your main camera. And honestly, it can be a really good first step for a lot of people. If you're not sure if you're into photography, but you don't want to make purchases to answer that question, just start being more intentional with your phone. Start taking more photos every single day. And then if that's something you enjoy, but you wish you could learn more about it, or you wish you could have a camera that could give you some more flexibility, then you know that that's a hobby that you can get into. Number 4, you can try before you buy. And this one I think is overlooked very often. You don't have to buy thousands of dollars of photography gear to find out whether or not you are interested in photography. It is very likely that you have a friend or a family member who has a camera who would be more than happy to lend it to you or to let you have it. That's how I came across a couple of my cameras in the past, and that's how a lot of people I know who got into photography got into the hobby, is by getting one from a friend or a family member. There's also the option of going to your local camera store and just renting some gear. So maybe there's a camera that you've heard a lot about or you've seen a lot online, and so you decide to rent it for a weekend. Usually that can be pretty inexpensive, like less than a couple $100. So you can have it for a good bit of time, take a lot of photos, maybe even take it on a trip if you feel like you can be safe with it, and then come back home and see if that's something that you enjoyed. So yeah, there are lots of options to get into photography or test out photography before you make the full plunge. And I would definitely encourage you to look into those options if it's something that you are interested in. Number 5, my recommendation, the Lumix GX85. So one thing I really like about MKBHD videos is that he tries to tell people like what he recommends for a large majority of folks, whether that's like a smartphone or a camera or whatever piece of tech. And so in this conversation, I want to mention the Lumix GX85 as the camera that I recommend to a large portion of people. I think it's super affordable. There's a lot of room to grow. You can start with one lens and go to as many as you want. The lenses aren't that expensive, so if you do want to build a collection and find what focal lengths make the most sense for your style of photography, you can very easily do that. The body is solid, it's well built. The in-body stabilization is incredible. You'll be able to take photos in low light situations. The sensor size is much bigger than your phone, so you'll be able to see some benefits there that might get you into larger sensor photography, whether that be crop sensor or full frame or medium format or large format down the road. And it's very easy to get your hands on them. They're pretty popular cameras, so you can find them used for, like I said, under $500 or so. The only thing that really gives me a pause when recommending this camera is that it's not weather sealed. So if you are interested in landscape photography, or maybe you specifically want to take this camera on a trip somewhere where it rains often, it could definitely be a bummer to spend some money on a camera and then have it get damaged by rain or inclement weather or whatever that looks like. So yeah, but my recommendation for a lot of people is the Lumix GX85. It's one of my favorite cameras, and I think it could be one of yours too. So I hope these 5 questions have been helpful as you start to think about your photography journey. And the last couple of things that I want to leave you with are, 1, photography is super subjective. So whatever looks good to you is great. And your style might change over time, and it probably will change over time, and that's also great. But really what I'm mentioning here is that just because you see someone using a certain camera in a street photography video or a landscape photography video or whatever, doesn't mean that you need that camera to create that look. So just make sure that you're still thinking through what makes the most sense for you. And then the second thing that I want to mention is I'll probably follow up this video in the future with some quick reviews of all the cameras that I have, or maybe even some cameras that I get to borrow from friends, just to kind of share some pros and cons, because every camera does have pros and cons. And also maybe just a more in-depth look at some of the images that I've taken with those cameras and what I like about them versus some other cameras, just to give some more insights as to why I have 6 cameras and like what makes each camera a little bit different. So yeah, if you have any other questions or thoughts, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments. If you yourself have been through this photography journey and you have some insights to share with other people, also feel free to drop them in the comments. But I'll see you all in the next one.